Hi, this is Esther Lynn for MMAfighting.com, and I wanted to share some of my favorite images of Kevin Ferguson, better known as Kimbo Slice, from my years of documenting his MMA career. I had the fortune of being present during Kimbo's first foray into MMA. When I met Kimbo in 2007 to film him at Boss Rutan's gym, he was so immediately welcoming and friendly. By the end of the day, we were joking around and began what, looking back at my collection, would become a tradition with us. I was at the American Bank Center when he debuted against Bo Cantrell, where most famously in the lead-up, Kimbo had been saying, "Give me my bread," and then in the post-victory press conference, proudly held up a loaf of sliced bread. After his bout with Bo Cantrell, Kimbo was to fight Tank Abbott, and a ramp-up on the media tour began. Kimbo appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Kimbo looked at the photos of celebrities who had been on the show before him with wonder. He was excited to join their ranks. I loved watching Icy Mike and Kimbo share their happiness. When it was Kimbo's turn to talk to Jimmy, we gathered around the TV in the green room to watch. Mike beamed with pride as he watched his friend on the television. It was the night before Kimbo's birthday, so after the taping, Elite XC staff brought cake to celebrate, and we threw an impromptu party. At Fight Week in Florida, we went to a private workout with Kimbo and a local TV station, and after a demonstration of his skills and some interviews, Kimbo made another silly face at me. Kimbo's brother and mother were there to support him as well. When it came time for the fight, everyone in the Bank United Center was standing. Then, the arena darkened as Jimmy Lennon Jr. announced the fighters' names. Kimbo Slice's face across the big screens above the cage. The atmosphere was electric. The fight was over soon enough, and I rushed to the cage, saw his wife Antoinette there, overjoyed. Fast forward to the big deal. May 2008, Kimbo Slice would be on CBS. We had a big budget, 3-day feature shoot in an elaborate warehouse setting. During Kimbo's interview, he was always selling the fight. But when the cameras were off, he was his usual silly self. One of my favorite portraits was this photo I took of him on my Yashica T4. I printed this out in my old garage darkroom. Sadly, I can't remember how this photo happened, but it did. As my memory starts to fade, I'm disappointed I didn't write all this down sooner. There was a big press conference on a CBS soundstage to introduce the fighters to the media. It was funny seeing MMA fighters explaining to mainstream media various techniques, constantly reiterating the rule set, but Kimbo was always having a good time. Soon, we were in Newark at the Prudential Center, readying for the big CBS debut. Gina Carano fought Caitlin Young. Prudential Center was packed. An odd no contest was called for an eye poke in Lawler versus Smith, and then it was time for the main event. James Thompson had Kimbo Slice in mount, and it felt like the fight might be stopped in a second, but Kimbo Slice weathered it and came back to famously pop James Thompson's ear with a punch, the juices squirting out onto the photographer next to me, Dave Mandel of Sherdog. I was not very experienced, so I handed him a tissue instead of taking a photo of him. In the post-fight press conference, Brett Rogers called out Kimbo Slice, accused him of getting the referee's favor, and Kimbo responded, "You hater, Rogers." It's not a good picture, but it's just a very vivid memory for me. Months later, we would be back to build up the third CBS affair, this time against Ken Shamrock. More media days, workouts, and funny enough, a spot on David Blaine's television show where the trick isn't really a trick, I guess. Kimbo Slice punches David Blaine in the stomach. Though, Kimbo actually punched Blaine twice, so they could get 2 angles on the shot. Yeah, it was real. We were back in Florida again. I found this photo of a young Ariel Helwani of MMA-rated fame interviewing Kimbo Slice. Then there was this surreal coincidence where a local radio station was holding a Kimbo lookalike contest for free tickets, and Seth Petrozelli happened to walk out of his own interview on the station and and pose for a photo with the winner. That evening, spirits in the Ferguson household were high as they celebrated the week with a cake, watched the countdown show for the fight with his family. Even Charles Lewis Mask was there. It was a nice night. I love this moment where we're walking up to the weigh-ins and Antoinette is fixing Kimbo's beard before he walks into the building. As Kimbo got off the scale and then they squared, the room turned upside down when Ken Shamrock shoved Kimbo's slice as he had turned to walk away. The next night, you all know the story. Shamrock had cut himself in the warm-up at the arena. There were whispers of the fight being off, but Elite XC pulled Seth Petrozelli from his fight against Aaron Rosa, and we had a new main event. I just remember the shock. A disgruntled crowd in disbelief, Elite XC execs with their jaws dropped, a frenzy swirling out of control as Petrozelli ran around the cage. Elite XC would fold a month later, and I wouldn't see Kimbo for a while after that night. 1 year later, Kimbo Slice would end up on the 10th and still to this day, the most watched season of The Ultimate Fighter. And come the week of the finale, it was like seeing an old friend. That fight night was famous or infamous for so many bits of MMA history, but here we'll only discuss that Kimbo Slice emerged victorious. It was nice to see him succeed, and still with that gold fist. He would lose his next outing in the UFC next year, and then it would be 5 years until I saw the man in the cage again. And like before, it was always warm. Seeing Kimbo brought back an idealism for me, that age-old story of succeeding despite the odds stacked against you. His family was always so sweet and welcoming to me. Kimbo was always respectful, despite his looming image and Street Fighter history, and I was sad to see him go. Through both Bellator fights, the ups and downs, and just the utter strangeness that surrounded the bouts, there was Kimbo Slice. Even in trash-talking Dada's baby nuts, he had to apologize to his daughter for his crass language. The man was a legend. There was always an anticipation that filled every arena when he walked out. One of the reasons I love this sport, and I don't know how much of this is the nature of prize fighting and its central tenet that every person can be beat, that every man or woman has lost or will lose at some point in their careers. But this circus we're all involved in has such big, open hearts. Such warm, loving, and humble fighters who stick with you. Their memory reminding you why you love to capture these images and tell these stories. Kimbo Slice was a good man, a father, a husband, a brother, a son, and a good friend. And it ain't bad to have a friend in this brutal game, in and out of the cage.